All right, good evening. So, before we go on with the unit of work implementation, let's have a look. Let's go back and have a look at our controller. Let's pick the course controller, or okay, let's pick instructor controller. Good. Now, when we pick this controller, what we realize is there are system works inside here that needs not to be here. The reason why I want to tackle those before we move ahead is sometimes if you have all these patterns implemented and you don't have a well-structured project, it also becomes a nightmare. So let's deal with that first before we implement our unit of work. For instance, if we take create, adding a new, if we want to do any validation here, what happens at this level? That means we are going to write, for instance, if what? If instructor, if string dot is null or empty, instructor dot what? Instructor name. Something should happen or what? Something should happen. If we do this here, what we are trying to do is we are trying to bring business logic into our controller. Now, what happens is we should try as much as possible to make code for handling presentation remain in the controller, business logic also on another level, and our data access logic also on another level. Currently, we have succeeded in moving all our queries into the repo here, but still inside our UI project, our presentation, we still have some business logic there. So what I'm going to do is I'll add a new project so I can separate that business logic from the UI. So let me call this project. It's also going to be just a class library. So let me pick a class library here, and that is it. Next. So I'll call this lockdown app.bl as a business logic. Good. Good. So we have a new project here. This business logic is going to reference our data access, and our UI project is also going to reference the business logic project. Good. Perfect. So now this handles presentation, this handles data access, and this handles all our business um, issues. So I'm going to do just a few for, I'm just going to refactor this controller, only this controller, for the sake of time. You can look on that and use that in order to just learn from it. So I'll do for only this, and then later we move on to implement the unit of work. So for instance, if we have to do any validations before we save, or even come to delete, for instance, I want to delete an instructor, but when I delete an instructor, I want to delete all related what? Courses assigned to that instructor from the instructor course table too. That means I'm going to write two queries here, one to delete from instructor, another to delete from uh, the instructor course table. And when I'm calling a save, when I'm calling save over here, I have to call on instructor repository, and I have to call a save also on the instructor course repository. So this is not going to, it's not a good implementation. That won't be a good implementation. So what we need to do is come here. Let me add a new folder here. Let me call it interface. Good. I'll add a new class. Add a new class here and call it the instructor service or business or whatever. Instructor service. Let me just call it instructor service. Now this needs an interface to be written again. So we call this I instructor service. Good. Good. And this should also be public. And this should be implementing I instructor service. So what happens is, instead of bringing our how do you call it, our repository here directly, what we are going to do is every business logic with saving data and everything will go into the instructor service, and that is what we'll bring here. This, whatever happens there, is just for presenting data, So inside the instructor service, I'm going to private read only I instructor repository. Let me call this instructor repository. Sorry, let me give it this instructor repository. Good. So we initialize this from constructor, no problem. Now let's start. The first one is curate. Now this curate thing over here should go from here into what? Into the instructor service. So what we are going to do here is, first we have to do some validation. So let me call this public. Let me do this public. Let me call it a tuple. I'm expecting a bool and a string. Good. And let me call this validate. Validate. What is it expecting? It's expecting an instructor object, instructor, which is this as an object. Perfect. Now we are going to validate some two fields there, required fields. So what I'll do is say variable error string, which will be equal to a new string builder. Good. Now if string dot is null or empty, it's null or empty what? The object provided dot the instructor name. What happens? Error string dot append line name cannot be empty. Good. Now what the if string dot is now empty, object dot is a title or no contact as a contact. Same. What do you do? Gosh. So we have error string dot append line. Let me say the contact cannot be empty. Good. So what do we do? Any validation we want to do, we can do here. So what do? We now return tuple dot create what? Error string dot is string dot is now dot no create string, okay, dot is null or empty error string. So that is it, and then we return error string dot to string. Perfect. So we have validation here just to validate the simple objects. we need this in our. So when we come back here, that means what is going to happen, we are going to take this repository from here. We are now going to do instructor service, which is this, which should be instructor service rather, and this, let's take this, let's do this again and initialize this. Good. So when we come to create, what we are going to do first is let's say validation results will be equal to instructor.validate. Validate what? Instructor. Good. Now, if what? Validation result dot 1. If it's true, then what do we do? If it's not true, if it's not true, I try as much as possible to avoid if branches in code, so it makes the code more readable. So if, what do? You throw new exception from where? From validation results dot what? Item what? 2. Good. But what if it is true? If it is true, then we are going ahead to save this particular record. So we'll do that too over here. Let's call this public instructor. Let's call this save instructor, or let's call it add instructor. Add instructor. It is expecting an instructor object. Instructor object. Let's call it an object. Good. So what happens here? Our instructor repository dot add this object over here, and instructor repository dot what? Save. Good. What next? We return what? Our object. Good. So we come back to this controller, and we are going to take this whole thing from here. So it's now going to be saviors dot what? Add. Okay, we don't have this in the interface, so it goes back to the interface. Then we can add instructor here and add the object to it. No, it's not called. Over here is called instructor. Sorry, it's called instructor. Perfect. So we may not need this again. We don't need this. We don't need it. So we have a cleaner code again. When we come here, anything you want to do before you save, maybe you want to add created dates or whatever to it, you do it inside here before you add this instructor to whatever here and call it your save here. Now, let's go back. Delete. We are still finding here. So what do? We come to our instructor service. Inside here, we can have public get instructor. Get instructor is going to return an instructor from here. And we say get instructor int by providing what? An ID. And when I return the repository here dot what? Find what? ID. Good. So this we add to the interface here. So inside here, instead of this now, we can now do instructor service dot get instructor. Cannot. Okay, it wants this to be nullable. No problem. These are things you can handle on your own. So this should be nullable. No problem. Good. So this is also done. When we come to delete, we have same here. You can copy this and paste here. But do we even need to do this inside here? Delete. We can go here and say public instructor, and then we call it delete instructor, and we are expecting an ID. We are expecting an ID. So whatever we have here, oh sorry, whatever we have here, you can go here. So we don't even need to call this, we can just call this directly here and remove from here and save changes. After that, we return instructor. Perfect. So in the controller, instead of all this, what we're going to do is this instructor service dot what? Okay, we didn't add this to so this is going to be instructor delete int what ID. Perfect. So we're going to now delete instructor from here, passing in what? ID. This is nullable. It's nullable. It's nullable. Good. And we can do it here. Good. So whatever check that is happening here, you can still do this check, but inside your instructor service, you can do any check before you do your deletion or here. So as we let's move forward. So we've done this, we've done that, we've done this too. Good. Now this is same here. This is edit. So we are getting an instructor and passing to the view. So instead of this, we can call instructor service dot get instructor and pass an ID to it. Perfect. Update. Good. The update here assumes you're updating everything, but we can do this better. When we come here, we can say public instructor is going to return an instructor. Let's call it update what instructor. What are we are expecting an instructor object here. Instructor object here. Perfect. Whatever is happening here, we can move it and go here. So what do we do? From here, we can say, okay, variable existing object should be able to get instructor by object dot what ID. You can do any validation before you call this. Because of time, I'm skipping all those validation. Now you can now say existing object dot what dot instructor name should be what the object you posted dot instructor name. So this one gives you the control to update what you want to update, not just posting everything to DB. So we have contact here, which should be equal to object dot what the contacts to here. Perfect. After that, we call our save. Because save, we return the existing object. Perfect. We have to get this into our interface too. So inside the controller, what do we have? If model is what about the service dot what? Update instructor. Then we pass instructor to this. Good. If we don't need this, we can do all this validation in what? We can do this validation. We've already written the validation, so we are not going to repeat. We just say variable validation results be equal to underscore instructor service dot what? Validate what? Instructor. Good. So if not, validation result dot item 1 throw new exception, and the exception is going to be from what? Validation result dot what? Item 2. Perfect. Now there are times you want to check for, how do you call it, duplicates. So since you're using the same validation for both update and add, what we'll do is inside the validation here you can check if repository instructor repository dot what in. Okay, this you have to write if it exists to check that, but let's leave it for now because of time. We can do that in another. So this is get all. So inside here we can say get all instructors or get all active instructors so that we have control over it. Get I enumerable instructor, we call get all instructors. And what are we going to do? We are going to return this dot get all dot to list. Perfect. So we have this back into the inside here, so we can use it here. Dot get all instructors. Perfect. Now let's go through our controller now and see what we have. So now we've managed to create a business layer now, which is this, which is going to do more interaction with the database access, which is this, and this is going to feed our presentation layer with whatever we need. So what happened is you need this structure because there are cases, for instance, let's just take an example. Anytime I delete an instructor, I want to delete related courses that have been assigned to that instructor. Now, you're going to be injecting a lot of repositories in your controller, which shouldn't be so. So what happens is the instructor handles all that at this level. So for instance, if I want to, the business layer, read only I instructor course repository. Let's call it instructor course repository. Perfect. So what happens? This is the business case, the business logic, or the business requirement. Anytime you delete an instructor, delete all related instructor courses. So what happens here? After I've removed instructor from here, what I'll do is I'll have to get all courses assigned to that instructor. So we go to our repository here. Inside the repository, this is instructor course. All right. So you see the use of our repository now. The repository actually, on creating it, it has inherited all the basic things you can do. But this one, I want to get courses that have been assigned to a particular instructor. How do I get it? I can only do that from here. So I can say public IEnumerable return instructor courses. Return instructor courses and get by instructor ID. Perfect. So int ID. So look at what we are going to do. Over here, we are going to return find x such that x dot instructor ID equals to ID that have been passed to us. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So this must exist in the interface. I don't know why I always like reversed. You should always start from interface, but I like to write my class before I write the interface. So I come back here and I put this in the interface. Very good. So when we come back to this service, I can do this variable get all courses, which should be equal to what? Instructor course repository dot get by instructor ID. And what is that? That's going to be instructor dot what? Dot ID. Perfect. So with all these courses, I can now come here and say from instructor course repository dot remove range what? Get all what? Courses. All the courses I have over here. I can remove all of them. Then what happens? I call this and I call instructor course to save to. This is where the problem is. This, you save to the instructor repository before you save to the instructor course repository. What if after saving here, something happens and this doesn't execute? That means the instructor is going to be deleted, but instructor course will still exist. So this is why we required a unit of work. So I'm going to write a unit of work after this one. That's going to be the last one that we'll work on. But so this perfectly is our business, and all this is taken away from what? From the controller. Our controller becomes leaner and we are able to separate what concerns. So our controller actually concentrates on what? Presentation, just presentation. So when we take this now, this looks better, this looks cleaner, this looks more readable, this looks more what? Maintainable. So when you pick this, you know that, oh, curate, there's a validation here. If the result is not true, we are throwing an exception, which is this. If it is true, we are adding an instructor and we are redirecting. Perfect. The same applies to this. The same for this, the same for this, and for that. Let's try this. This is for instructors. So let's try this and see what happens. Oh, before we try this, we added iService for instructor. We have to bind that inside our Ninject, sorry. So let's come to Ninject. We come here, we're going to have kernel dot what? Bind iInstructor service. We add it to, should be binded to what? To instructor service. So instructor service. What is happening here? Oh, this is running. That's why, sorry. Good. So we run this again. Perfect. 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 Takes time to load it. I don't know why. It's getting slow. Good. So we can go to instructors. Sorry, we didn't add this menu till we are finishing this course. Good. So we have still our instructors here. And if we want to delete one, Elvis, first, let's see the courses assigned to Elvis. Or let's put, okay, let's just put a breakpoint here, which is delete. When we are deleting an, let's put a breakpoint here. And let's see what is going to happen when I'm deleting Evelyn. So delete, sorry, I don't know what happened. What happened? Oh, we didn't call it here. We didn't call it here. So it's going to be instructor service dot delete instructor, and then we put an ID. Perfect. So let's try that again. Good. So we still have instructors, and we have Evelyn here. Let's delete, and we say delete. Good. So we have our breakpoint here. So what happens when we go through this? We get our instructor. We go through next. As remove, we get all courses, and we go in, remove range. Then we call save on this. Perfect. So we have an error here. Let's check the error that we have. Good. So what happened here is that this instructor has a reference to courses. So we need to delete the courses first. We need to remove them first before we remove what the, how do you call it, the instructor itself. So that is what this is happening there. So we'll try it again. The main reason why we need to implement even what, how do you call it, a unit of work repository. Perfect. So let's try that again. Let's try that again. Good. So we have instructors here. Perfect. We have this delete. We hit this delete. We are already here. Let's go through. So get all courses. Okay, there's one course. So remove that. Is removed. Saved, saved, save now, saved. And then that is it. So from here, everything has been deleted and the course have been deleted alongside it. So what have we achieved here? We are now able to separate concerns. We now know that we have our queries ending up in our data access layer. We have our business logics, everything in a business logic layer. And the UI is just concentrating on presentation. But there's one more thing again. This save. So what if I'm deleting from 5 different tables? That means I have to call 5 different save on 5 different repositories. That is why we need a unit of work to handle some kind of transactional flow for this kind of activity. Save, update, delete. So next, we'll implement a unit of work. Then we are done. We'll call it done. Thank you.